Breaking January 6 news to get to. Prosecutors say military veteran and Oath Keepers chapter president Ray Epps should face just 6 months of jail time for his alleged role in the January 6 Capitol riot. Assistant United States Attorney Michael Gordon said in the 29-page sentencing memo that Epps committed felonious conduct that day, but prosecutors acknowledged that Epps was targeted by an alleged conspiracy theory that, quote, falsely suggested he was an undercover government agent during the riot, per NBC News.
Prosecutors said, quote, other than his 4 years in the Marines, Epps has never been a federal agent. In the aftermath of the alleged conspiracies forced Epps to sell his business, move to a different state, and live reclusively. Epps is scheduled to be sentenced next week.
Yes, so I see a lot of conservative chatter about this. So obviously he is getting off lightly because he helped the government's case, he cooperated, et cetera. There has been a long theory promulgated by some conservatives that he was a government asset. No evidence of that has ever been presented. However, I do find if you just consider the side by side, they actually have Ray Epps on video at both the riot itself and the day before, urging people to storm the Capitol, to go into the building, being called out for doing so, clearly on camera. And he's going to get 6 months, whereas someone like Enrique Tarrio, who wasn't even there on January 6th, gets 20-plus years, terrorism charges. That's the reality when you cooperate or don't cooperate, I guess. And actually, Enrique Tarrio was in the past a government asset. We're adding a whole new wrinkle to this, but I think some on the right are far from seeing this as disproving that he was an asset, are going to see a double standard at play.
The median prison sentence for January 6 rioters is 60 days. Epps got 6 months. Yeah,
but as I said, some of the foremost alleged leaders of a terrorist-level conspiracy to overthrow the government, alleged by the government, got decades in prison.
So the actual guy who was a government informant, people are complaining that his sentence is too high. I would argue the sentence is too high. I'm never going to advocate for higher sentences.
Very high.
But to be clear, the argument people are making is that Epps is a government informant, that he instigated this, and that therefore his sentence should be, like, they're mad that the guy who actually was a government informant should have a lower sentence?
Well, Tarrio was not a government informant in the January 6th context. He was a government informant many years before. No, they think he got off easy because he's a government asset. Again, I will restate, I have been presented no evidence actually that he is a government asset. People found it weird or suspicious that he, despite being on camera urging people to enter the building repeatedly. And I don't know what you say the average sentence is much lower than that, but some of the people.
The average sentence is just 60 days.
But some people, the guy, the horns in the head guy got. He was sitting in like isolation for months awaiting trial, and then got more than 6 months.
Wait, so you're arguing that the guy?
I'm not arguing anything. I'm just telling you what I'm seeing.
Well, people are saying that the speech rights, the guy who stood outside and spoke, should have a higher sentence than the people who actually trespassed at the Capitol, who went inside the building and jumped around on furniture.
I'm saying they gave the most punitive sentences to people described as leaders of what was happening, including people who weren't even there. And he urged people, instructed people to enter the Capitol on 2 separate occasions. And this is what he got. Maybe that's it. Maybe he's getting exactly the correct thing, and it doesn't matter. I'm just translating for you what I'm seeing.
I don't know. Civil liberties interests, I'm never going to argue for people getting more jail time, and it does seem like he has 3 times more jail time than the average person convicted of crimes related to January 6th. So I have a hard time with that, especially since his deservedness seems to largely be hinging on folks' belief, unsubstantiated or unproven, that he was a government plant.
Right.
And moreover, I do think some of the mitigating factors, the way that he's been targeted and already experienced some of these harms and having to go into seclusion and having his businesses ruined and stuff, it's not illegitimate to think of those as mitigating factors. But when people are complaining about sentences, I think that they should be able to articulate how long and why they think someone should be incarcerated. Incarceration is a really big deal. And if the broader argument is that people have been put in jail too long for 1/6, it seems odd and sort of incongruent to be desiring for one of the people present to be in jail.
I'm not desiring
longer.
anything. And the sentences for the trespassing and all that seem within reason to me for the most part. I do, again, we agree on this, the terrorism enhancement sentences for leaders, some of whom weren't even there, that to my mind really assume what was a totally unproven, larger, very organized, very planned and coordinated attack on the Capitol, when that doesn't comport with what I saw when I was covering it. It seemed crazy to me, and those are the sentences I really object to. I don't object to the, between, weeks to 6 months or whatever that people got. I do think I don't like the idea of anyone, languishing in solitary, as I believe I keep calling him the Horns guy. The audience knows who I'm referring to. Seemed pretty awful. Again, regardless of the crime you've committed, you don't. Prison shouldn't be torture. It should be,
Yeah, look,
corresponding with the crime you committed.
Enhancements are a huge problem.
Yeah.
As we've discussed, the Cop City protesters in Atlanta were hit with those charges for raising money for a bail fund, for distributing pamphlets and mailers to people, a clear violation of their First Amendment rights. And we're seeing these terrorism enhancements being applied to protect the property interests of private companies having nothing to do with terrorism. When we see environmental protesters tying themselves to pipes or trees or whatnot, or even causing damage to those structures, you can sue them for damage. You can arrest them for property damage, the same way you would do it in any other context. But throwing them in jail for longer than murderers because of a terrorism enhancement, I think really undermines some fundamental rights that we have in this country.
I absolutely agree. Terrorism as applied to domestic political actors on the right and left who may have committed other crimes that I am absolutely fine charging them for, but just seems a way to be totally punitive, to worsen our, the state of our mass incarceration, and which is costly for society and has all other kinds of downstream problems. And the way, and I'm sure this happens all the time, but because I specifically read the Tarrio sentencing document or one of the others, it became so clear how it works, where they just overcharge. They say terrorism, so it should be 30 years, and the judge says, it was kind of like 50% terrorism. How about 15 years? And they say sold, and it seems totally unconnected to a basic principle of fairness. So that does it for us today. Tomorrow on Rising, we will cover the most important stories and give you just all the best takes. We know how in love with our takes you are every day. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who prefer to listen while you're on the go, we're now available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
We will close out the week with you tomorrow.
Take care.